featured speaker this afternoon, and I'm going to call on our program chair, Julie Scales, to provide our introduction. Julie.
Okay, I'll try and project. Our very pleased to introduce Allison Dolan, who is the president of the Clearwater Historical Society and Museum. Allison is the third generation Floridian. She's from Orlando originally, and she received her BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts, in Historic Preservation and Conservation from the Savannah School of Art and Design, also known as that. And Allison is also a member of Knowles County Historic Preservation.
Thing is, my dad was deaf in his right ear, so my entire family talks loud on a good day. So, which of course makes my husband completely insane. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the history of Clearwater and about our museum and about everything else that goes on around here. This is going to be quick and easy. I do talk fast, so I try to stop myself. So if anybody has a problem with how fast I talk, I also have 5 sisters. 5 sisters and a deaf dad do not count for anybody talking slow or slow. So the history of Clearwater, of Florida itself, starts with the Native Americans. There are proof of Native Americans throughout the area. I believe there's 2 in Dunedin. I also used to work for the state of Florida Bureau of Historic Preservation, so there's a lot of stuff that I can throw in there on those. But the Native Americans were here. They were more, people kind of think they didn't get mad until other people showed up. They were very passive people. And then the troop that was in this area was called the Tocobaga tribe. Now they have one of their mounds is Safety Harbor at Philippi Park. I'll tell you this one too, where the Clearwater City Hall was and all that, that's another mound, that whole bluff. So now it's a federal law, but it's okay, federally protected. But they were actually the ones that named it Clearwater. It was actually called Clearwater Harbor. I'm not going to pronounce the word that they used for that, but they translated to Clearwater Harbor. So it was 3 different names. And the reason they did that, if you go along the bluff along there, there's actually natural springs that pop up. So somewhere along the line, the civil engineers thought it was a good idea to cap some of them off. So it's not as much, that's what makes all the water so clear from that. So things started changing in the area in 1528 when the Spanish arrived trying to find gold in Florida. I don't know why they thought there was going to be gold here. They did get a lot of malaria. They did get a lot of other fun things that they could get there. One of the one that everybody knows about, he came in 1528. He really did not make good friends with the Indians, so he was the first one to kind of make them mad. So I'm saying that in a nice way. So the reason that we know this is Princess Yulele. We have a trailblazing woman. We did this one, so I have a whole deep dive on this woman. So she was actually the original Pocahontas. The Pocahontas, so you know, I am not the scholar that did this, so I'm taking somebody else's word for this, but they did a lot of work on this. The story of Pocahontas did not happen until 80 years after Yulele. And if the timeline is corrected, when John Smith say he came to Virginia and then met Pocahontas, she was 9 years old. So that's why we know that he got the story from the Spanish boat logs, ship logs. And then when they translated it to English, his first book didn't sell so well. So he threw this story in there and then everybody caught on to it and it was Disney-fied. So, you know, I'm from Orlando, so I've seen Disney-fied. So she was actually the original Pocahontas. So when the Spanish came, they went up there and they went up on the land over here by Safety Harbor and they came in and the chief, her dad, was not a big fan. So he killed everybody except for one man who did not die. So he decided to use him as target practice. And then, but then Yulele and her mom and 3 sisters got him back to health. Okay. So the sad thing is he really did not like this man. So he tried 3 times. The 3rd time Yulele took him and took him to another tribe over in Tampa to save his life, Mr. Ortez. So this is all, you know, can be documented and everything. So a lot of things that also happened was during the Spanish-American War, we had Fort Harrison. So if you want to know why Fort Harrison's named Fort Harrison, this is what it is. I don't actually have a picture of the building because it only lasted for 5 years. So it wasn't long. Typical federal government, let's build this thing and never use it. That's what happened. So, but it was for the Spanish-American, the Seminole Indian War against America. If you want to know where that was now, it's right here, right there. Did you live in that house?
No, I was on Turner Street, but used to go there all the time.
Yeah.
I love that section.
It's so beautiful. And there is actually a brass plaque. That's what that is right there. So it's a brass plaque telling about that's where the Fort Harrison was. If you can see the lovely pictures all the way from the bay all the way up to the house. Just so you know, the real estate agent will like to tell you that this is for sale for $23 million. It is being marked down from 49. So, you know, I know. So everyone always wants to know what brought people here, you know, and what brought people to Florida. Well, when the United States got Florida, they bought it. They said, okay, now we've got all this land. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to do this? So they passed the Federal Armed Occupation Act of 1842. And they said, if you are over the age of 18, you are the head of your household. You can have 160 acres if you go down there. Now, what you got to do is you got to build a homestead, and you have to say that you'll take up arms if the Indians attack. That was all it. But you got 160 acres. You could do whatever you want to. So that brought down a lot of people. I mean, 360 acres. You know, kind of forget about the mosquitoes and stuff. So James Stevens was the first one to come down. He knew about the fort, so he and his family lived in the fort till he found his 160 acres. He was the reason a lot of people came down because he kept going up. The only place they could get supplies was Cedar Key. So they'd have to go up to Cedar Key, get their supplies, and come down. The other thing is this was all run by Hillsborough County. I always say that Pinellas County was the redheaded stepchild of Hillsborough County. They wanted their taxes, but they didn't want to make it easy for them. So it is what it is. So one of his friends was James Paramore McMullen. So he said, James, come on down here. We've got all this land. You got to come down here. This would be great for y'all. So he came down, kind of liked it. And then he went back up and he got his other 6 brothers. So along McMullen Road, they had 160 acres side by side by side. And then some of their kids were over 18. They got the other ones. So that's how the McMullens came down here. Right now, we actually have an exhibit about the McMullen family that they came in and did for us because they were having their 100th anniversary of their family reunion. So we get to have that one. And this map shows you exactly what Clearwater looked like. You can see there's not a lot of houses, but it was very agricultural. So they grew cotton. They had, you know, one of the mayors during this time, his slogan was "Vote for me, and I'll make sure no cows can walk on the roads." You know, because I guess they were wandering aimlessly. The first paved road in Clearwater is where Cleveland Street is now, and that was the shells from the mound when they were building the Calvary Baptist Church. They took them over there, crushed them up, and we have a paved street. You know, one of those new finagle things. So here's the agriculture that they did, is the gladiolas. They did citrus. Philip, he brought in a lot of the citrus. He brought in different ones. So we had oranges, grapefruits, lemons, limes. They had everything here. And then gladiolas. And then they started producing the oranges and shipping them up north. At the time, they had the small rails. They can only do things like that. They couldn't bring people in until Mr. Plant came into town. So after the Civil War, he bought all the railroads because they were just here and there. They just kind of made them up. There was no rules here. I know that's shocking in Florida to have no rules, but they had none. And so he bought up all the bankrupt railroads after the Civil War. He made them all a larger gauge, which I have found out more than I want to know about this. But they got a larger gauge so he could bring down people from up north. And he built the Bellevue Inn. Now, the Bellevue Inn opened on Christmas Day of 1897. And that was this one he calls the country one. The highfalutin one is the one over in the University of Tampa. That was the elegant one. This was the one where you went to, you know, with nature. If you can imagine, this had all kinds of things around there. That was his steamship. When you would come in, the railroad actually came right up here. So if you were coming in for your 4-month stay, You would be dropped off here. Your private train station would go all the way back here. Your people, your luggage was dropped off there. And then it all went underneath the hotel. And you just, by the time you checked in, it was all upstairs. So they had a system. It worked for them. One of the other big growths in Florida and Clearwater area is that they got their first paid teacher. Her name is Jenny Plum. So if anybody's heard of Plum Elementary, the Plum family's been here for a long time. It's the second time I've mentioned them. It was her granddaughter who did the map that I showed you. It's actually on like paper, so it's like really crinkly. But this is the Plum house. When she came down here, she was a widow from the Civil War with 3 children. Her brother was C.S. Reynolds, who ran the newspaper. He was the pastor at the Calvary Baptist Church. He was a city council person. I mean, he was everything because there were so few people here. You wore many hats. I'll be a volunteer somewhere, isn't it? You can't just do one thing. So Jenny moved down here. She was taught. She made, I think it was $20 a month with her 3 children. Now, her son bought the Plum house. Now, the Plum house was actually a hardware store. We own this. This was our first headquarters. And the middle part here, it was just, and then the men from the Bellevue Inn lived upstairs, and it was a hardware paint store downstairs. And it was over down by Bel Air Road. And so then her son Ralph was like, I've gotten married, I want a house. So they moved the house, well, the building, down South Fort Harrison and put it where Lakeview and Myrtle is. I know this doesn't mean, but like next week you're gonna go down the road and go, oh, I know where this is now. But that's where it was. So they added on the porch, they put the new part on in 1901 of a kitchen and a dining room. And then they put the porch on there and everything like that. So this house was again in 1983 bought by Dr. Nash. He donated to the Clearwater Historical Society, and it was moved again down the railroad tracks and into Ed Wright Park. So this house has made a lot of moves around the area. But Jenny came down. She was the only paid teacher. She took care of these winter guests. She would teach their kids, plus the kids that were here, and like all over the place. She had one of her schools was in the cemetery. It's called the cemetery school. So I'm like, don't know if I'd go with that one. But the first public school built with public funds was what we're in now, Southport. Built in 1906. For years, they kept saying, we want our own school, we want our own school. The property that we're on actually has had a school there since 1865. So it was a wooden structure, then they added another room, everything like that. So they finally got this one. The state goes, here, just stop bugging us. Here's the money, go do what you got to do. So they did. And when they built the house, they did it in 11 months because they said you have 1 year to spend the money. They spent it in 11 months, built the place. And after Labor Day, 1906, they opened up school. So it was the first time they had it. All grades were in here. So they had, first through 12th grade. The first graduating class in 1906 was 4 people. So last week they had, last couple weeks ago, I think theirs was 500. So it's grown a little bit here. But we got the property in 2014. As you can see, it's 5 acres and 6 buildings. Building 1 is where we have the museum. And then we have all this other property here. So it kept growing. Building 2 was the first Clearwater High School. The second one was on North Greenwood. The third one is where it is today. And I don't know if you want to call it the 4th one since they redid the whole thing, but it's still there, same spot. So for some reason, we thought this was a good idea to get this big property. So how did Clearwater become the county seat? Well, after years of asking the state, saying, hey, listen, for us to do any state business, for us to do any federal business, we got to go to Tampa. We're farmers. And now you're telling us we have to go to Tampa. We have to take 3 days out. It takes 1 day to get over there. You got to stay the night. You got to do your stuff. You got to take the next day. You got to come home. So that's 3 days that farmers don't want to be off their land. And their wives didn't want to stay home with the kids by themselves that long either. But they don't have TV or internet. So, so the state of Florida says, okay, you can be your own, county. And so then St. Pete's like, I think that we should be the county seat because we're very sophisticated. We're going to do this right. And that Clearwater's like, we're going to do it. So the governor didn't care. So he said, whoever builds the first courthouse gets to be the city county seat. Now, St. Pete went and hired an architect. They're doing all the drawings. These people, they're farmers. They just went and got some wood, put it all up there. And St. Pete's like, we're going to come burn it down. You did it in wood. And so they had people there 24/7. Now, this is a very deceiving picture because they took this picture, got up to Tallahassee. Remember, it's going to take a while. So they got up to Tallahassee and he said, okay, y'all got here first, you're it. Now, the thing about this picture is this is only the front of the building. They built the rest of the building while he was on his way up to Tallahassee. So they built the front. The wives even made curtains if you can see them. I mean, it really looks like that. The fellow stood there, says, here's our building. We did it before St. Pete. We're now the county seat. So, and this building was where Peace Memorial is now. So you kind of, it's like you drive by these things and not know this. So Morton Plant Hospital, which now everybody in the world knows, was before he opened up Bellevue Inn, Henry Plant passed away. So everything was given to his son, Morton. So Morton kind of took over everything. Now, the city's growing. I mean, in the 1900 census, it shows 36 people lived here year round. But, so it kind of gives you an idea here. So now all of a sudden he's like, hey, listen, so these ladies in 1914 went to him and said, hey, we really want to have a hospital. And he says, that's a really good idea. And they said, so can you just give us $200,000, which in 1914 is a lot of money. And he said, no, I will give you $100,000 and you got to come up the other $100,000. And I will also give you the hotel to have your fundraiser. So he says, I give you 2 years. If you don't raise in 2 years, too bad, so sad. They're like, because he brings his own hospital in a train. So he didn't really need it. So the ladies had their fundraiser. They raised all the money in 6 months and they got the Morton Plant Hospital. So that is the story of that. Now, Morton Plant has a story which is untrue, that Morton Plant's son got hurt and he was so devastated that he had to go all the way to Tampa to get help for him and all this other stuff. No, it's just it was $100,000. So that is why it was built that way. So I always tell them, I go, don't stop telling that story. It's not true. So I always tell everybody, my job is to tell the truth, good, bad, and ugly. So our next thing is we're going to talk about the war years. Now, I do have to be kind of happy about this because the reason my husband lives here is my father-in-law was a World War II bomber, and he lives in Fort Harrison Hotel. And during that, he loved it so much. When he retired, he came down here and brought my husband with him, and now I'm married to that man for 26 years. So, but all the hotels were taken over. The Biltmore was for the Army Air Force, which is now just the Air Force. The Fort Harrison was where the Army was. If you ever go to, they used to practice bombing on Stampede. And so we have a lot of the dead bombs because they just got buried in there. They drew up. One of our librarian that we have, God bless her, she's from Michigan, so she didn't know all this part. So somebody came walking in with her, like, hey, here you go. And she's like, oh my God, and I'm like, she's like, she's thinking it's going to go off any second. I go, tell me, don't worry about it. So now she's like, take it out of my library. I'm like, it's not going to blow up, but we're good. So Clearwater's had a big military presence all the time. One of the other things that came up was Donald Roebling. If you don't know who the Roeblings are, they built the Brooklyn Bridge, that one that a lot of people sold bricks for, that, if you did that. But he also did the Alligator, and that helped the Marines win World War II. And he built that. The funny thing is, in Dunedin is where he manufactured them, but he built them in Clearwater. His pool that he had, he would go up and down the pool, then he would try it on the things. If you've lived here long enough, you know Cycles Gardens. The lady who owned that, he used to come by and pick her up and take her grocery shopping because he had to try it out. So they would go all over the place in this thing. So he also built his house, Spotify, which is still there. He built it just like they built Brooklyn Bridge. So if you ever want to buy a house that you know is never going to be hit by anything, it's made out of steel and brick. It's never going to move. It is right there next to where Fort Harrison was. And when somebody bought it in the 80s, it was all his property. They broke it up to where it's now 6 houses right there. So now you have all these modern houses with this beautiful house there, but it's right there. Right up in Druid where everybody else is, right? So we have the Capitol Theater, because as it grew, now you got to entertain these people all the time. And so they built the Capitol Theater came along, and it was there since 1921. The city took it over 15, 20 years ago and redid the whole thing. So it's now, and they expanded it, and the Ruth Ecker Hall now runs it. But they did everything there. They had, rallies for and then the Victory Gardens, they did everything at the Capitol Theater because that was the main center of all their entertainment. Come on. Now, I know that y'all have the Blue Jays, but we have the Philadelphia Phillies. They have actually been here for 78 years. The only team that's been at their spring training longer than the Phillies is the Tigers over in Lakeland, and they've been there 79 years. So they've only been there 1 year more than the Philadelphia Phillies. We also got a Carnegie Library. I mean, this is how the city grows. You start getting these things. Now, the one thing, the original bridge over Clearwater, from Clearwater over to the beach, which I would never go, just so you know, because we have some of the bathing suits, they're wool. So if you can imagine wearing a wool bathing suit to the beach, not going to happen in my house. But so they had an old brick, and it was a wooden bridge, and they would take this back and forth. Now, one of the oral histories that we did was a man who worked at the restaurant at the end of that. He said they didn't even fire up until they started hearing the cars coming across it. That's why they call it old rickety, because it went, and they could only do one car at a time. So it was like very loud. And of course, they had other things that were going on here. You have the lawn bowling that just turned 100. You can see where the beach is, how the beach was. This was the beach in 1920. There's no houses. There's, I think there's like 2 houses on this whole thing. The rest of it was just everybody went out there with the Australian pines and their wool bathing suits and were crazy. And then you have the downtown area too. So then the war is over. Now, Clearwater was the largest producer of gladiolas in the world. So that's what they did. So what they would do is they would grow these gladiolas. They would cut them right before they got to bloom. They'd wrap them all up, put them on the train, take them up north, and that was it. They went everywhere. Now, they did this for years. Then finally, after the third freeze, the guy goes, this is not worth it. I'm packing up. He went down to Fort Myers, and now they're the biggest producer in the world. But he did sell his land to a guy who created Skycrest. So if you ever go through Skycrest, and the neighbors there will tell you, all of a sudden gladiolas will just pop up. They didn't plant them, they just go. So you can imagine 60 years later. So that's where Skycrest, because the soldiers were now coming back from the war, they wanted housing. So they started all this that way. So that is the quick and easy history of Clearwater. I would be a very bad president, I tell you what we do. We have actually done exhibits on the founding family. These are the ones that are up full time, except for the one in the middle. That's for the McMullen family. We have 4 galleries and we keep them going all the time. One thing that we also do, one of our biggest ones, is the Trailblazing Women. Julie was a Trailblazing Woman in number 5. She was our 5th, you're the 5th one, right? Yes. So she was honored then. Sally Park. Yeah. Sorry. That's okay. So we do the Trailblazing Women. That's right. And so we just did our 6th one. We're getting ready to do our 7th. If y'all know anybody, a woman that should be honored. When we were going through all the artifacts that we had, we realized there's a lot of women out there that have done a lot of stuff. And the fact that they came down here with their husband and didn't kill them for taking them to a hot place, I think is a good thing. No air conditioning. And we have other things that go on all the time at the museum. And one of the other things that we're really happy about this year is they're doing America 250. This might be something, also y'all want to do. Heritage Village is heading this up. And so I would like to invite you all, if you want to do a oral history. The Pinellas County actually bought a program called Our Story, which is really kind of cool. We do the oral history. It'll give you a transcript. If you're a scholar, it'll give you, you can do that. We can put pictures in and do videos and everything like that. But this way we can keep our stories there. They'll always be there. We're one of 4 of the licenses the county gave. So Heritage Village and us, and I don't know who she gave the other 2 to because I don't care about me. So, giving us something else to do. We're also going to do, we have the old cafeteria. If you ever remember your cafeteria from this was built in 1958. So it has the terrazzo floor and everything like that. We're going to turn that into a meeting space. So it'd be something, like this. We are done by volunteers and donations only. So we always offer, like y'all do, somebody to become a member or volunteer and help us out. And to stop the whole thing, I want to tell you a fun story. We're getting ready to do an exhibit called Did You Know? And it's about Clearwater. We found out a lot of fun facts about Clearwater, but one of them that really cracked us up was the Clearwater Monster. If you don't believe me, the whole movie is on YouTube. Looks just like this. And you can go and watch it. What happened was There were three men that worked in the 1940s and 50s, and they're like, we're kind of bored. The radio shuts up early. It's not a whole lot going on. So they decided to take a pair of Converse tennis shoes and they welded metal feet to these. Now you're thinking, why would they do that? Well, they decided, and there might have been alcohol related to this, just so you know. They took their boat out and dropped one of them off, and then he walked around on Clearwater Beach. So everybody got up the next morning, they're home laughing. Okay. Everybody go, oh my God, monster, all this other stuff. They're going crazy. So the radios get involved. We've got a list, we've got a folder this big of articles about this, transcripts from radio shows. The Smithsonian came down and took casts of this. I mean, this was a big news story. So they're like, okay, there's too many people coming in Clearwater. We're going to go down to Indian Rocks. So they went down to Indian Rocks again, may have been some alcohol involved, and they walked over down there. So then everybody moved down to Indian Rocks, and now everybody's like, oh my gosh, now nobody's down here in Clearwater. Okay, we'll do it down here. They did this for years. Okay, and nobody caught on to this. Now, the niece says that the feet were underneath his desk, and you could have seen them if you looked hard enough. That's where they were. They never really hid it. They just didn't tell anybody. So they did this. He finally, the last survivor of the three men, in 2008, finally came forward and said it was us, and this is what we did. So it is a very fun story because, and that just tells you this craziness in Florida has gone around for years. Nothing's new. But this was listening to the son and this niece talk about how they did all this was kind of fun. So that is what we do. I only got you up to a certain point because I figure after that, there's a lot of craziness that went on and I'd be here for 3 hours. So trying to make this quick and easy. Yes.
Quick question. Did the gladiolas, were they brought from another country?
No.
Were they native to here? Or?
They were not native to here, but they bought the bulbs here.
Oh.
And they also tricked them into thinking that summer was winter, the way they did it. And so they did their growing during the spring and summer instead of normally they would do fall and winter.
Huh.
So I don't know how, it's a whole thing. I read a whole article and still can't tell you how they did it, but they changed it to that way. And so then now the Fort Myers one, like I said, the A&W went down there. They're like, we're not doing this Clearwater stuff anymore. Does anybody else have any questions or crazy things you've heard? Yes.
That original settler that you mentioned, Stevens.
Stevens, yes.
What year did he get here? Where did he come from?
He came from, I gotta get this right. He came from New York and then he went to Georgia. He lived there for a few years. Then he went to Brooksville and then he heard about this and he's like, he came down and moved into there. That's where he was originally from. 1845. So I don't know why anybody would do that. I'm just gonna tell you, I'm not a pioneer mother. My kids are very happy about that. So if you have any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer any of them. If you don't, I hope that you enjoyed this.